Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jagavan Lava Irvartari Gopi Jagavan Lava Irvartari Yasodhanandana Brajajanandana Yamunatira Vadachari Yamunatira Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Ballabha Irvartari Yasodhanandana Brajajanandana Yamunatira Vadachari Yamunatira Vadachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Gopi Jana Ballabha Irvartari Jai Gopi Jana Ballabha Irvartari Yasodhanandana Brajajanandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamuna Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Stoja Satashi Simad. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Bhavam Subhadharaj Gacharya Astatara Satashi Simad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Go Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tonight we will focus on a key verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 22. The chapter where the four Kumars, headed by Sanat Kumar, appear at the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu. And a very important verse is recited, quoted in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. I find that this verse answers a lot of questions devotees have about their spiritual progress, the temporary reality of material desires, and the hoped for awakening of spiritual desires. This verse and its purport give you the complete perspective by way of an analogy about rivers and oceans. And of course, you may recall that in Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse 70, Krishna uses the same analogy of rivers and an ocean. So we'll recite this verse, text 39. Yad pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya. Karmasayam gatitam udgratayanti santa. Tadvanna rikta matayo yatayo pirudha. Shroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya. Karmasayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. Tadvanna rikta matayo yatayo pirudha. Shroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam. Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya. Karmasayam gratitam udgratayanti santa. Tadvanna rikta matayo yatayo pirudha. Shroto ganastamaranam bhajavasudeva.
bhaktya Yadhara pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya Karmashayam gratitam udgratayam tisantaha Karmashayam gratitam udgratayam tisantaha Vanarikta matayo yatayo piruta Vanarikta matayo yatayo piruta Soto ganastamarana bhajavasudevam Soto ganastamarana bhajavasudevam
Yadpada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya
Yadpada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya
Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha
Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha
Tadvanarikta matayo yatayo piruta
Tadvanarikta matayo yatayo piruta
Shoto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam
Soto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam
Vaishnavis,
Yadhara pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha Tadvanarikta matayo yatayo piruta Soto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam Yadhara pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha Tadvanarikta matayo yatayo piruta Soto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam Yadhara pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya Karmashayam gratitam udgratayanti santaha Tadvanarikta matayo yatayo piruta Soto ganastamaranam bhajavasudevam
Yat, whose, Pada, feet, Pankaja, lotus, Palasha, petals or toes, Vilasa, enjoyment, Bhaktya, by devotional service, Kama, fruitive activities, Ashrayam, desire, Gratitam, hard knot, Udgratayanti, root out, Santa, devotees, Tat, that, but, like, Na, never, Likta Mataya, persons devoid of devotional service, Yataya, ever increasingly trying, Api, even though, Ruta, stopped, Shrota Gana, the waves of sense enjoyment, Tam, unto him, Aranam, worthy to take shelter, Bhaja, engage in devotional service, Vasudevam, unto Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Translation. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities, because this is very difficult The non-devotees, the Gyanis and Yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is a long purport. We'll take sections of it, and as well as correlate it with a verse and purport from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 70. So we'll begin the purport. There are three kinds of transcendentalists trying to overcome the influence of the modes of material nature: the Gyanis, Yogis, and Bhaktas. All of them attempt to overcome the influence of the senses, which is compared to the incessant waves of a river. The waves of a river flow incessantly, and it is very difficult to stop them. Similarly, the waves of desire for material enjoyment are so strong that they cannot be stopped by any process other than bhakti yoga. So we'll take a section of the purport at a time. So first of all, you learn that bhaktas are not the only ones trying to overcome the influence of trigunamayi, the modes of material nature. The modes of material nature affect everything in material existence. Your body, your mind, your conceptions, your emotions, everything. And there are always different permutations of the modes of nature. Just like, for example, you could say that the devatas, the demigods, are in the mode of goodness, human beings are in the mode of passion, and animals are in the mode of ignorance. But even within major operation here. Even within those categories, there are permutations. Like amongst the devatas, the demigods, there are higher and lower. Just like upadevas, near demigod status, like the Gandharvas and Apsaras. And amongst animals, although animals are generally considered in the mode of ignorance, you have cows that have a goodness, and you have lions which have passion, and other animals that have ignorance mixed in. So every particular body of living entities has a particular mixture of the modes of material nature. Someone who is intelligent uses their human life to overcome the modes of material nature. And those are three types of candidates for overcoming the modes of nature, not just the bhaktas. You see how comprehensive and non-sectarian Srimad Bhagavatam is. It's laying out in front of you all the possibilities and then proving to you what is the best way. Often people say, are you trying to say bhakti is the only way? And as you know, I often answer by saying, well, before you talk about what's the only way or the best way, where are you trying to go? No, they don't know. But they want to make sure you're not saying that this is the only way or the best way, even though they don't know where they're going. So you have to explain very gently that the best way or the only way, depends on where you're trying to go. You need knowledge of your destination. Just like if someone says, State Highway 1 is the only way to get to Levin. Well, at least you know where you're going, and then you can evaluate. Well, there's State Highway 1, and then you can also go roundabout through the Wairarapa and come across from Palmerston North over to Levin. Or you could say you could fly to Paris and come across the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. But at least you have some idea where you're going. And with intelligence, you can understand that some ways are better than others. But people have this conception that as soon as you say, this is the best way, there must be some deficiency. There must be a problem here. Doesn't it sound so pseudo-spiritual that, well, always should take you wherever? That sounds very open-minded, ecumenical, non-sectarian. All the ways work for taking you to, the whatever. But this is deep ignorance. Just like if you say, all the roads in New Zealand lead to, the whatever, people would think you're crazy. But if you say, all ways, all paths lead to the whatever, oh, very deep. How spiritual you are. How open-minded you are. So sometimes persons, they have an attitude about Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam because everything is so specific and all the personal details are spelled out. People think that vagueness and murkiness is the sign of spirituality. Those of you who remember a little book I wrote called Perfect Escape, you may remember how in the preface I quoted one prominent New Age author at the time. Of course, New Age has pretty much disappeared because people think since the goal of New Age is sense gratification, we just should have the sense gratification. Who needs the New Age? Let's cut to the chase. So I quoted him. He wrote that the soul doesn't want answers. The soul wants endless mystery. How's that sound to you? Woo, woo. As soon as you come up with an answer, you know it. This is not spirituality. Be strong and just be content living with the mystery, the unsolved riddles of life. Gives you a real false sense of self-worth. Yeah, I'm living with the mystery. I don't have the answers. No one has the answers. That's the answer. That no one has the answer. And of course, the other mantra, no one knows. And of course, you understand where the trap for that is. If no one knows, then why are you talking? Don't say anything. Just keep your mouth shut. No one knows. But you're making a declarative statement. No one knows. Oh, you know that, huh? So in this verse, you are informed that there are three kinds of transcendentalists. But first of all, you're going to wonder, why isn't anyone attempting to overcome the influence of material nature? Is that a career option presented to you in school? In your curriculum, for your high school, college, university? We have a course for you that teaches how to overcome the modes of material nature. No. So that's why sometimes this knowledge in Bhagavatam can seem lofty Because you're wondering, well, where are the Gyanis? Where are the mystic yogis, not the physical posture yogis? Where are the mystic yogis who are attached to developing mystic powers? Where are the Gyanis who, with their intelligence, can metaphysically speculate that there is an eternal energy and that we're not the body? They can figure that out with their intelligence. Where are those people today? And then, of course, you know, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Mam Abhijananti. Only by bhakti can I be understood. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Karma Yoga, but concludes by saying, of all the different types of yogis, Yoginam api sarvesham madgatenam taratmana shraddhavam bhajate yomam same yukta tamo. Of all the different types of yogis, the one who's best is the one who's always engaged in my service. So again, we see the broad scope of the Bhagavatam. There are three kinds of transcendentalists. And what are they trying to do? A transcendentalist means to go above, transcend, to go above. To go above what? Trigunamai, the three modes of material nature. So all of them are attempting, but how are they doing? How's it working out? And this verse points out that the other transcendentalists, they get somewhere, but they don't get out of the grip of the material energy. They have no lasting solution to the problem of being stuck in the material energy. So that is true for these other two transcendentalists. Then what about those who are just karmic workers, struggling for satisfaction of the senses? Sometimes people think that's a bit too blunt. I'm doing more in my life than just struggling for satisfying my senses. I'm volunteering, I'm helping others, I'm doing this, I'm traveling, I'm making music, I'm writing poetry. But if you trace everything to its bottom line, you find that there's a desire for satisfaction from the material energy, whether gross or subtle. So, in other words, when you see the whole picture, the Gyanis are failing in their mental speculation. They figured out that you're not the body, but that's not good enough. And this is important for us to understand, that simply understanding you're not the body is just the beginning. We want to understand Krishna and how Krishna is infinitely attractive. We want to know the science of Krishna. Who is Krishna? What does he do? Who are his associates? What are the different types of relationships with Krishna? What are the different avatars of Krishna? What does the original personality of Godhead Krishna do in his topmost abode, Vrindavan? Why does Krishna come as his own devotee, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is also Swayam Bhagavan, the original personality of Godhead? We want to know all about this. Sometimes when I'm talking to devotees, as I've been doing the past few days, sometimes seeing 6 or 7 devotees a day, I wonder, do they understand that their life's mission is to develop attraction for Krishna? Not just to think you're different from the body. Of course, sometimes I wish that everyone would get it, that you're not the body. But bhakti goes far beyond that. And we need to hear about what's beyond the stage of non-identification with the material body, so that we're inspired to go on with our service. Of course, if you're simply absorbed in the practical activities of bhakti, you'll develop an attraction for Krishna. But you have to cash in on that practical service by, indeed, opening a book and reading it, chanting Hare Krishna with attention. Because as I often explain, and you've heard it before, the practical activities feed into the hearing and chanting, and the hearing and chanting feed into the practical activities. So what makes Bhakti Yoga in this day and age so exotic looking is that there's nothing else going on that would even give the slight hope of overcoming the modes of material nature. The Gyanis have that hope. The mystic yogis have that hope. It's not going to happen. They get a glimpse, but that's all. They don't have any permanent footing, some solid standing. So there's no other game in town. So that makes us look like we're being very narrow. Because everyone else is absorbed in karmic activity, fruitive activity. It's a funny word, meaning they want the fruits of material enjoyment, material growth, material advancement. They're picking the fruits for better or worse. But Bhagavatam is not just about Kali Yuga and Kali Yuga so-called civilization. Bhagavatam is giving you the whole panorama of what a real human civilization is like. This verse is coming from the discussion between Sanat Kumar, the head of the four Kumaras, and Prithu Maharaj, who's a Shaktivesh avatar, an empowered incarnation, for the purpose of demonstrating the qualities of a perfect king, perfect chief executive. He's a jiva, he's part and parcel, he's not Vishnu Tattva, but he's specially empowered with this divine potency of demonstrating how to be a perfect head of state. So, where are the four Kumaras coming from? They're not from Earth. So you see, immediately you're face to face with the extraterrestrialism of Srimad Bhagavatam. You can forget that. Oh, it's just the four Kumaras talking to Prithu. Where do the four Kumaras come from? So just right then and there, your consciousness is expanded. Your horizons are expanded. Oh, the four Kumaras just dropped in. From where? Where do they come from? Where do they live? And of course, you know how the four Kumaras have decided to keep themselves always in the form of little boys because they don't want to grow past puberty. They want to keep their innocence and their lifestyle uncomplicated. So Sanat Kumar is talking to Prithu Maharaj, giving him instruction, and we hear that there's a problem with the attempt to overcome the modes of material nature. And these are problems that we experience and wonder, is there any solution? So you find out that there is something called Shrota Gana, the waves of sense enjoyment, which produce gratiton, a hard knot. You take a string and you tie one knot upon it, you tie another knot. So that's what happens when we engage in karmic activity. One knot upon another knot is tied, one after another. But all that can be rooted out by devotional service. Therefore, Shroto Ganastam Aranam Bhaja Vasudevam. Bhaja Vasudev. engage in devotional service unto Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Otherwise, what are your chances? No, never. Rikta Mataya, persons devoid of devotional service. Even though Yataya, ever increasingly trying, it's not happening. But we can have some sympathy, at least they're trying. But what about the denizens of today? Overcome material nature? You should enjoy material nature. Use your life to be self-affirming, self-verifying. It's your life. Be the independent, free spirit that you are. Do any material activities you like. Sprinkle some so-called spirituality on top. So a main problem is that the conditioned soul thinks he or she is independent. Think about your independence, your concept of independence, and how attached you are to it. I'm being me. I'm doing me. I'm being there for me. All those slogans. It's time for me. So the notion is that you have independence, but that only goes on in your mind. It's not in actuality. Just think of what is it that you do materially without conditions. There's always some condition impinging upon what you're doing, affecting what you're doing, shaping what you're doing. Yet in the mind, you think, I'm free. I chose this instead of that. But you can't see that you're bound up by the modes of material nature. And those modes of material nature affect all your choices. So where is the independence? It only exists in your mind. Well, I chose this instead of that. I'm free. I was just reading one slogan today that as long as you are expressing yourself in whatever way, you are being creative. Sounds inviting, doesn't it? All you gotta do is just express yourself in whatever way, and you are creative. Wow, I'm creative. How wonderful is that? Everyone wants to be known as creative, even though they're always imitating someone else. They're always repeating what someone else said. Their opinions come from someone else. In fact, as soon as you hear someone say that, I'm trying to be authentic, you know they're imitating someone. So where is the independence? You have to ask yourself that question. It only exists as a mental concoction. In reality, you can see that you're a slave of material nature. Slave of your mind and senses. Slave of popular opinions, popular fashions and styles. Yet we have this vision in our mind. I'm independent. And if I take to bhakti, what happens to my independence? I've got a life ahead of me. Yeah. 30, 40, 50 years. It's a lot of time for me to do my thing. And then you look at the elderly people walking on the street, and you never think that's going to be you if you live a full lifespan. And where's their independence? So therefore, Sanat Kumar is saying, Bhaja Vasudevam, engage in devotional service. To whom? as you know, the Bhagavad Gita presents Krishna as the ultimate goal. And Krishna is personal. Everything in Bhagavad Gita is about unto Krishna, or Krishna saying, aham, I, or ma, unto me. This is why, in case you wondered, the lotus feet are stressed. To let you know Krishna has form, Krishna has feet, but they're not like material feet. Our disease is that as soon as we hear about feet, we think, oh, I know what feet are. How could feet be so attractive that they're called lotus feet? Lotus flower is very beautiful, but someone's feet are like that. But Krishna's limbs are not ordinary. There's no difference between Krishna's within and Krishna's without. And at the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's asserting his individuality, his personality. Atvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadava. Never was there a time when I was not a person. There's no time right now that that's the case, and there will never be such a time in the future. Not only me, but also all you living entities. You're eternally individuals. So once we accept that Krishna is eternal, then we want to find out more about Krishna. Because we actually long to be eternal. We don't like being disrupted in terms of our life, being terminated. Of course, sometimes people get so desperate they wish their life would end. But that's when they've lost all hope for any options. But people want the feeling that they'll go on and on and on and on. What else? They want to know as much as possible. Unless they're in the mode of ignorance, they want to understand. What is this universe that we're living in? Am I this body or am I not? And they want to be blissful. Not just happy, because happiness comes and goes, but they want to be at a steady state of blissfulness. Satchit Ananda. They want eternity, full knowledge, and uninterrupted bliss. That can happen in the material energy. So therefore, Sanat Kumar is saying, focus on Krishna's lotus feet. Yat pada pankaja palasha vilasa bhaktya. Krishna's toes are like flower petals. This garland has, although it made me sneeze, it has nice petals on it. How can someone's toes be that beautiful? Not only are the toes of Krishna like petals of a lotus flower, but also his toenails emit such an effulgence. Not only do his toenails emit such an effulgence, but his feet give off such an aroma that just a whiff of the aroma from Krishna's lotus feet can turn an impersonalist into a personalist. That's what happened to the four Kumars. There's saffron dust particles on the lotus feet of Krishna, and the four Kumars got a scent of that, and their consciousness was transformed. So yes, the Supreme Absolute Truth has feet, but not feet like yours. So becoming comfortable with the fact that Krishna has a form is very important for us. So Sanat Kumar is saying, focus on devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has such lotus feet. Otherwise, you'll never get out of the grip of material nature. So the yogis think they're independent, the mystic yogis. They want to develop mystic powers far beyond what is known today. And the Gyanis want to merge into the Supreme. They don't want to do devotional service, except possibly sometimes as a ladder to get to impersonalism. And then they throw the ladder away. At best, impersonalists think that you use bhakti to develop your powers of concentration, and then when you're mature enough, you can just kick away your bhakti practice and merge into the Supreme Absolute Truth, become one. No question of devotional service. So how can there be any solution without devotional service? This is another point that's being raised in this verse. So I'll read the translation again. The devotees who are always engaged in the service of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord can very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult, the non-devotees, the Gyanis and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of sense gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. So this concept of the waves of sense gratification is very important. The example is given in the purport. The waves of a river flow incessantly, and it's very difficult to stop them. Similarly, the waves of desire for material enjoyment are so strong that they cannot be stopped by any process other than bhakti yoga. So what is our program to stop the waves? The average Kali Yuga denizen thinks the more waves of sense enjoyment, the better. Let the waves come and come and come. Even though they're suffering so much because of the waves. There's hope that there'll be a happy wave, a good wave. They don't see the problem in the flow of the waves of the river of sense gratification. Whereas the bhakta wants out of that river. How do you get out of such a river that's always flowing? The incessant waves of a river. How do you get away from that? So we'll go on reading. The bhaktas, by their transcendental devotional service unto the lotus feet of the Lord, become so overwhelmed with transcendental bliss that automatically their desires for material enjoyment stop. So that's what devotional service does for you. It overwhelms you with transcendental bliss, so much so that automatically your desires for material enjoyment stop. Now you might say next, well, when's that going to happen? This is what your short human form of life is meant for. It's not like making instant coffee or something. As Nectar of Instruction, Sri Upadeshamrita says, Utsaha Nishtaya Daya, enthusiasm, patience, and determination. The Gyanis and yogis, we continue reading, who are not attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, simply struggle against the waves of desire. But that struggling against the waves of desire seems to be meritorious. What are you doing? I'm struggling against the waves of desire. Well, yes, we give you credit for recognizing that there is such a thing as the waves of desire. But you actually have no solution because you're unaware of the unlimited nectar at Krishna's lotus feet. That unlimited nectar is devotional service. So at least the Gyanis and yogis, the mystic yogis, understand that there's such a thing as the waves of desire that you have to struggle against. At least they understand that we should try to overcome the three modes of material nature. Today's civilization is so condemned, no one has a notion of that. They may be religionists, they may be scientists, they may be politicians. Very rarely is there any notion that we should be adopting processes for getting out of the grip of material nature. We'll continue to read. They are described in this verse as rikta mataya, which means devoid of devotional service. So you might say, well, so what? Devoid of devotional service? Big deal. But if you want to understand Krishna, you can't do it without devotional service. In other words, we continue to read, the Gyanis and yogis, although trying to be free from the desires of material activities, actually become more and more entangled in false philosophical speculation or strenuous attempts to stop the activities of the senses. So you may recall a verse from the first canto of Bhagavatam about the development of knowledge and renunciation and how that happens as an accompaniment to the bhakti process. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Priyojita Janayat Yashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayarahitukam. By engaging in Krishna's service, you equip yourself automatically with knowledge and detachment. You don't have to try for detachment as a standalone goal or knowledge as a standalone goal. Bhakti includes Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, the conclusion of all Vedic knowledge, hearing about Krishna, reading about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. That's two of the 9 processes of devotional service. Here also the same point is stressed, as was done in the first canto. Bhaja Vasudevam indicates that one who is engaged in the loving service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, can very easily stop the waves of desires. Very easily? What do you think? But it happens. You may not be aware of how such detachment develops. How such detachment from the waves of desires begins as a kernel and then sprouts into something bigger. Something else in your life starts to develop. It's not all about just battling the waves of sense gratification. But as long as one continues to try to artificially stop the waves of desire, he will certainly be defeated. That is indicated in this verse. Desires for fruitive activities are strongly rooted, but the trees of desire can be uprooted completely by devotional service, because devotional service employs superior desire. How do you handle this flow of material desires? Let's recall a verse in Bhagavad Gita. This is text 70, as we presented to you earlier. Apuryamanam achala pratistam samudram apa pravashanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravashanti sarve shashantam apnoti nakama kami. So this is a very mystical verse in terms of bhakti, not mystic powers as conventionally known, but the bhakti mysticism. How can you handle the waves of material desire? What are they? Why are they there? When will they go? Krishna says, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So there are some practical points, some very realistic points presented in the purport. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. So, oh no. But something else is going on. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. Fullness of what? Fullness in devotional service. So we hear that a Krishna conscious person is like the ocean, always full in himself. Now this is very scientific in terms of bhakti mysticism. So I want you to focus on this. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean. Because you have a material body. Material body means material desires. But is that the end of it? Oh no. So I guess what can be done? I've got a material body. I've got material desires. I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles. No. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he's not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Huh? This is very important. Although the desires are present, the Krishna conscious person has lost all inclinations to act on the desires. Now, this is hard to understand because we're so Kali Yuga-ized that we think desires mean acting on them. You know, I always point out that we don't see any separation between desires and acting on desires. We've been brainwashed. The body has desires, act on it. There's no gap between desire and acting. Oh no, I have these desires. I must act on them. Why? Because I have these desires. That's a Kali Yuga notion. But here, we're being told that desires may come to the bhakti yogi like waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean. But the bhakti yogi is steady in devotional activities because he or she has lost all inclinations, although the desires are present. Lost all inclinations to act on those desires. Even though, because you have a material body, the desires are present, you're full with something else. Because he remains satisfied, the purport continues, in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. So this point is very crucial. How a devotee has lost all inclinations to fulfill desires that may still be present in the body. Seems like something so far and beyond this, but it's not. Because what happens is as you absorb yourself in devotional service, something else inside you starts to develop. The rivers of material desires are flowing, but then there's the ocean. You've all seen estuaries, like at the Otaki Gorge, when the river comes down from the mountains and then goes under the highway and out to the ocean. So yes, the river's flowing into the ocean, but when there's high tide, the ocean pushes back and sends its own water into the river, and actually, in that way, overpowers the river. That's what happens at estuaries. Inlets, they call them in other countries. The ocean is coming in and overpowering, overwhelming the river water that's pouring down from the mountains into the ocean. So much so that the ocean water takes over. So this is how to arrange your spiritual life so that the ocean, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the flavors of devotional service, overpowers that constantly flowing river of sense gratification, waves of sense desires. So if you can visualize this, then you've caught it. You've got your fingers on the pulse of the bhakti reality. Something else has developed in you. So much so that what's happening with your material body is not the most important thing, believe it or not. I like one example that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives in his commentary. He says, in other words, visualize a lady dancer with a basket or a pot on her head. She's dancing. Yes, the body is moving this way and that way, but her concentration is on the pot on her head. So the pot on her head doesn't fall off while she's dancing. So even though the body is doing this and that, the focus is on something else. So similarly for the devotee, even though the body is feeling this, the body is feeling that, the mind is feeling this, the mind is feeling that, the devotee is focused on devotional service. And that focus on devotional service is generating another reality, it's generating another internal reality. So you can visualize this, the lady dancing. I don't think anyone here has ever done it. Dancing with a pot on your head or a basket on your head. Anyone here done that? But you can understand what it's like. The body is moving, but the concentration of the dancer is on what's balanced on the head. So even though the body is doing this, the body is doing that, the focus is not on the body, it's on keeping the poise, keeping the balance so that the pot doesn't fall off the head. Another example that Sanat Kumar gives is the coconut husk and the pulp inside. It can so happen with a coconut that the inside separates from the husk. You ever seen that? If you shake the coconut, the ones with the brown husk on, you shake the coconut, you can actually sometimes hear the inside rattling around inside. So even though there's an inside to the coconut, it's detached itself from the outside. So the inside of the coconut, it has its own reality, even though it's inside the husk. So similarly, by engaging in devotional service, you're developing your internal reality, which becomes more and more luxurious in terms of devotional service. So even though things are happening to your external body, because you're internal development is becoming so strong, you don't become swayed by what's going on with the coconut husk or what's going on with the material body. You've generated your original natural reality of devotional service to Krishna. So all these examples, these analogies are important. They help us. The rivers pouring into the ocean. You think, oh my goodness, the river just goes on and on. The waves of sense gratification just go on and on. But no. The ocean can push back. At high tide, the ocean especially pushes back and overfloods the river with ocean water. So that's how the bhakti yogi always remains equipoised in Krishna's service. You're always in contact with the Rasamrita Sindhu, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the flavors of loving devotional service. And that's the main reality, the ocean water, not the river water. The ocean is more powerful than the river. So this verse, spoken by Krishna, we should think about. Kama kami, one who desires to fulfill desires, can never be peaceful. This is the trick of material nature. Just do this, just act on this desire, and you'll be peaceful. Finally, you'll get the monkey off your back. No. Nakama kami, not the one who desires to fulfill desires, but the one who is full in devotional service. You can try to battle it out in the river of sense gratification. You may be an expert rafter, white river rafting, but you can't win. But if you take the side of the ocean of bhakti, that overpowers the river. So you have to situate yourself in that way. So again, the translation, a person who's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. This is repeating what we heard in 4th Canto Bhagavatam, the incessant, non-stop flow. So you may be wondering, when is that flow going to stop, right? Gosh, Krishna, give us a break. But it doesn't stop. I've got news for you. It does not stop. Something else happens. The ocean manifests, the ocean of bhakti, and overpowers the river with the incessant flow of desires. So the river may flow, but it becomes, as Prahlad Maharaj says, so insignificant, sukhami tucha. It's like a fly landing on your shoulder. You don't fall to pieces when a fly lands on your shoulder, do you? You're at New Gupta Raj and some tiny little bug lands on your shoulder. Oh my God! Oh no! Oh. No one does that. You just, or you don't even take the time to flick it away. You know it's going to go away, or it's so inconsequential. So again, the flow of the river is not going to stop. You have a material body means material desires. Does that mean you're doomed? Your bhakti efforts are doomed? No. There's the ocean, the Rasamrita Sindhu, which overpowers the river. So much so that the water from the ocean dominates, becomes the prime reality, not the river water. So yes, the river water is trying to keep flowing, but the ocean has overpowered it. Similarly, the example about the coconut husk. Inside, the coconut husk is dry. You've seen a coconut with like brown husk on it? So inside is the white pulp. But if the coconut is mature enough, the white pulp separates inside, and you can shake the coconut and you hear the white pulp rattling around inside. So similarly, as your spiritual life matures, Your body becomes one reality, but your intent and desire to serve Krishna creates another reality. Your natural, original reality. So this is the mysticism of bhakti. This is the only solution to the problem of the modes of material nature. As Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Mam cha yoga vicharena, bhakti yogena sevate, sargunan samatityatam, brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For one who is constantly engaged in devotional service, such a person is no longer in the grip of material energy, of the material energy. Such a person surpasses the grip of the modes of material nature because of engagement in devotional service. So we'll continue to take a look at this purport of this Bhagavatam verse. One has to desire the Supreme in order not to be entangled in inferior desires. Jnanis maintain a desire to become one with the Supreme, but such desire is also considered to be kama, lust. There's no aspiration for service. It's just, it's like if you can't beat them, join them. We'll merge. All right, there's a superior spiritual energy. That's me. No question of service. Similarly, the yogis desire mystic power, and that is also kama. And the bhaktas, not being desirous of any sort of material enjoyment, become purified. There is no artificial attempt to stop desire. Desire becomes a source of spiritual enjoyment under the protection of the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. One should therefore take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord instead of trying unsuccessfully to stop desires for material enjoyment. As long as one is unable to stop the desire for material enjoyment, there's no possibility of becoming liberated from the entanglement of material existence. So ordinarily you would feel doomed. How am I ever going to be liberated when I can't stop the desire for material enjoyment? But we just heard that instead of trying unsuccessfully to stop desires for material enjoyment, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which means take shelter of devotional service to Krishna. So I wanted to read you one more part of this long purport, which takes a lot of thought, in case you want to look at it afterwards. 4th Canto, chapter 22, verse 39. It may be argued that the waves of a river are incessantly flowing, and that they cannot be stopped. But what? The waves of the river flow toward the sea. When the tide comes over the river, it overwhelms the flowing of the river, and the river itself becomes overflooded, and the waves from the sea become more prominent than the waves from the river. Similarly, a devotee with intelligence plans so many things for the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness that stagnant material desires become overflooded by the desire to serve the Lord. So there you have the secret. You can't battle the desires of the material body, hand-to-hand combat, one-to-one, mano-a-mano. You do something else. You jump above the problem by taking shelter of devotional service, which is the tide coming in from the ocean that covers the river water. In fact, replaces the river water. So this is a very key verse. Every verse in Bhagavatam is important. but this one especially is focused upon by the acharyas because it shows you the process of bhakti at its culmination. This is what's going on. Something is replacing something else in terms of what's the dominant influence in your life. Even though as long as you have a material body, there'll be material desires, but that doesn't mean you're condemned and hopeless. Oh no. Something else becomes the predominant reality. Bhaja Vasudeva, for those who engage in devotional service to Vasudeva, Krishna.